And we're live. Welcome to the Path Forward. This is the Roundtable for Thursday, April 30th. And there's a ton of shit going on. Disregard my bad hair day. Yeah, fuck it. Call it good. This is the t-shirt. The t-shirts are in. This is the mug. The mugs are in. So if you want one, DM me. Getting a website set up for it so you can just order it and then we'll just drop ship it. Should be up in 2 weeks or so. And yeah, interesting. So we were talking before the show. We were talking about what were we talking about? We were talking about Michael Yon. That's what we were talking about. We were talking about you. Actually, we were talking about a couple of different things. So all of us have heard that Trump is talking about there's a rumor. I'll just say it that way. There's a rumor that we're going to commit ground forces and conduct strikes. Evidently, when you guys was talking about Putin called Trump, I don't know.
We'll just commit ground troops to Iran.
Yeah, I heard
It's hard to imagine we're not going to. It's hard to imagine we're not going to.
Remember, we only have one rule, Michael. You can't be more bitter than I am. That's the only rule we have here.
Okay, I'm gonna work on it.
You can hit the guardrails, but you can't skip over it. No, I heard the same thing. I heard Carg Island. I've heard parts of the peninsula. I've heard a couple of different. I don't know what's real. I don't know what's not real. I don't know what's real. But I heard that this morning, and then I heard Alex Jones talking about it briefly before I got on the show.
So I don't even pay attention to anything that Trump says, actually, because it's irrelevant. I'm looking at more of the river flow. You know what I mean? Not what he says about the river flow. I'm just watching how the natural order of things, which is the way that not paying attention to him, but by paying attention to that sort of the thing. That was how I successfully predicted the date of the ground attack, or the date of the initial fighting, and also the that we would close Strait of Hormuz and blame Iran. I was putting that in writing in 2025 over and over, that I thought that this would happen. It was kind of obvious, actually.
Yeah, I reposted your Substack several times about it.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious.
That was in July 25.
You have to get rid of the noise, obviously. Like Trump is noise. He's cackety, right? I mean, this, and he's not even relevant to the larger grand strategy. He's just a passing leaf. He's a passing nothing on the big scale of things, on the grand strategic level. He's just kind of come and go. So that's what I'm saying. He doesn't really affect the big. He's just a player. He's this guy. That's Trump right there. I keep Trump on my desk. and yeah, and he tries to cut his strings from his ruler. There he is.
That is too damn.
There he is. Yeah, I mean, this is yeah, I mean, that's our guy right there.
If you watch his news cycle, his information cycle is on Friday he makes a big fat claim. Everybody spins out of control over the weekend. On Monday he walks it back. He says something just as inflammatory. It's the same thing he did from 2016 on in the news cycle. So
it's a waste of brain cycles. It's a waste of brain cycles. We have to devote our brain cycles to, like, keeping our eye on the ball, not what some guy out in left field saying, which is Trump. He's the guy that's there to cackle us, right?
The bigger question is, how soon do you think he's going to go? So supposedly Putin called one of them today, either Netanyahu or Trump. I didn't hear that. I don't know who heard it, and talked him off the ledge. But I heard he was going to go yesterday.
I think he's just a kayfabe. Again, paying attention to him it's a distraction. It's clear to me what they're doing is creating conditions for global famine, right? Trump is completely irrelevant to the long picture. He's not any more player. He's a strategic corporal. I mean, he's there for a moment. He'll be gone.
Well, who do you think's calling the shots then? That's going to be the next question, right? Who's calling the shots?
Right. It's certainly not him. I mean, he's an install. It could be as much of the architecture as anything else, because this has been going on for centuries, right? Now, in more recent times, an emergent power structure has been Zionist, right? Political Zionist. Now, the political Zionists are fighting CCP, and it's clear that it's clear to me anyway that CCP, that the Chinese Communist Party, that the Zionists are trying to put, they're trying to destroy CCP and Russia, right, and us as well. Not just them, but they're using us to destroy them,
they're
and
going
them
after
to
us
destroy
too.
us, right? So they're using everybody to destroy everybody, right? And because they're agents of chaos. But it's clear on a strategic level, not grand strategy level, but strategic level, they're trying to put China into famine, right? So if
Yeah.
you're gonna put not just China but the United States and others, if you're gonna put us and others into famine, you're gonna do exactly what they're doing: close Nord Stream, close Groningen, attack all these fertilizer plants, which has been going on for years, lawfare the farmers off their farms, so many different solar panels out instead of corn, uh, ethanol, gasoline, or whatever, all these ways that just impact our food supply. Setting conditions for famine has taken decades, and they're working on it. And so the ultimately not just controlling Strait of Hormuz, but knocking out the energy production, just killing it. And so but again, they're making workarounds because life tends to find a way. Like they've got railways over there and that sort of thing. And but I think ultimately what you're going to see is Malacca is going to get shut, Turkish Strait, Danish Strait, Panama. Now, keep in mind, if you're going to put China into famine, you're probably going to start a war between Argentina and Brazil. And for various reasons, we went down and looked at the railway in Argentina about a year and a half ago. Masako and I did, but that bioceanic corridor there between Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, and Chile. It's a you'll want China not to be able to use that if they get into because they get a lot of their food from Brazil, and they get a lot of their food from the United States, and a lot of their other food comes through Strait of Malacca and also other mechanisms. But if you start a war between, first of all, I think Argentina is probably going to go ahead and go for Falklands, Malvinas. When we were down in Buenos Aires, there was signs all over the place, not just in Buenos Aires, but other parts, about Malvinas. He's setting the information conditions for the Argentinians to go for the Falklands, which could be, good if you're going to control Drake Passage and that sort of thing.
But they've already said
the
it,
point
right? They've said
I
it
think
twice now that they're going to go after it.
they're going to end up probably starting a war between Brazil and Argentina, and that's going to be about food disruption. They don't want the food flowing to China and other places. Now, a lot of that food goes through the Panama Canal. There's numerous ways you can get food from Brazil to places like China. One is the Panama Canal, which is saturated right now. There's ships, anchored off both edges of the canal now because they can't get through. It's so much traffic. So the food often is last place because those ships can't afford the kind of money that the people with more expensive cargoes can pay.
But don't
Panama
forget
Canal,
that China owns a lot of
Drake
our food
Passage off the
processing too,
tip
right?
of South America, and then there's other routes that you could get to China with that. But you would really slow down a lot of the food production if you started a war between Argentina and Brazil, choke down the Panama Canal, obviously, and the Drake Passage. I mean, all these things, none of them are a kill shot, but they're all, everybody, a lot of war people here, right? It's about setting conditions, right? It's about blocking that door, mining the canal, right? So I mean, not mining the Panama Canal, but you know what I'm saying. But so they're clearly setting conditions to go for this. Now, for the Chinese, they're responding. They're talking about building the Craw Isthmus canal or corridor, which has been talked about for at least 300 or 400 years. In fact, I just had another book come in a couple days ago from 1881 with old maps of the Craw Isthmus canals. This book is from 1881. I just got it from Australia. I've got a bunch of old maps. The first time I did a recon of Craw Isthmus for the purpose of canal work was in 2014. And I went down there, and so that was like 12 years ago. Because sooner or later, I thought, you know what? They're going to close Malacca at some point. They're going to want to have that, and now they're going for it. Now, so this book is
they've announced
French. It's
it.
from 1881.
The question
But
is,
it's
how
got
soon do you
maps
think
of
they're
the
going
three
to?
potential places to build a canal across the Craw Isthmus.
How soon do you think they're
it's
going
only a
to
24
shut it
page
down?
book.
That's
But
the
keep in
question.
mind, in 1881, when this is the Anyway,
I
you can't.
don't.
You
Can you
can
guys hear
barely
me?
see it, but actually, I'll tell you the name of the book if you wanted to try to
I don't
find
think
one.
he can hear me.
But it's got the old maps.
Well, he's going full ATIS, full transmit, no
the French
receive.
had succeeded with the Suez Canal in 1869, and they were starting to get ready to go for Panama, right? And so the French and the British were going heads up. But what I'm getting to is this is the same fight.
This is the
same
Michael
fight.
Yarn Hour, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
This is the name of the book in case you wanted to find it. But what I'm getting to, this is the same fight. There's no difference. We're just in a different. These fights take a long time. These fights unfold over generations. They don't unfold over I'll leave it up so you can screenshot it. Is it in focus?
Sure.
Yeah. So you can, but that's an old book from 1881. But anyway, they're talking about building the canal. So it's nothing new. They're, in the news, it's like, oh, new canal thing. No, they've been talking about at least since 1667 or so. So but I think it went back before that. But, but what I'm getting to is it's clear that that this is a, new routes and resources are coming into play. The resources that were important 300 years ago often are not important now, like whale oil. I mean, we don't fight over whale oil and guano anymore, right? The fight, so the resources that we fight for they're not static, and also the routes are not static. Like the Panama Canal didn't exist before 1914, and the Suez Canal didn't exist before 1869, right? So as these new routes emerge and new resources are needed, like now we're dependent on fossil fuels, and so and now like lithium is a big deal. Lithium wasn't a big deal in the 1800s. Now you see the flooding that happened in North Carolina with that hurricane Helena happened to cause problems right in places where there is essential the raw resources there that are needed, and today that weren't needed in the 1800s. As we were moving the Indians around all over the place, we were moving them around because they were on land that we wanted, right? Resources, land and resources. Sometimes the land's the resource for growing or whatever, but over time those resources change. Like you go to Argentina now, and I was in quite a few meetings down there, and the subject of the meetings typically was about the energy there and the lithium. I mean, they were always bringing up the lithium and lithium, and the energy. Argentina's got a lot of energy. So China,
I'll try and ask this again.
And the Brazilians, I'm sorry, the Zionists are going to be fighting over Argentina. Your microphone's not working.
Mine's not?
I can't hear you.
What about me? Can you hear me, Mike? I think you got your speaker off.
Yeah, your speaker's off.
What about now?
You seem to be muted. I'm trying to figure out what's going wrong.
Yeah, we heard you.
I can't hear you at all.
Okay, let me check your mic settings. That would explain why you didn't hear it. No, mic volumes are.
I can't hear you at all.
Test 1, 2.
There we go. Got you.
Okay. So the question of the day is really, given all of that, because you were on full transmit and we were on try to receive.
I couldn't hear you. So if you were trying to interrupt, I couldn't even hear you.
Yeah, but we got that.
I was like, they're letting me talk, so I'm going to keep talking. Unbeknownst that we were muted. I'm like, you guys are probably trying to knock in, and I'm just sorry.
No, it's all good.
All good. New call sign ATIS. All transmit, no receive.
ATIS. The question of the day, though, and I mean, you bring up a good. So first of all, I think I definitely agree with the fact that they're architected in famine. You can't forget that China has a lot of food processing capability that they own here in the U.S. How that plays out is going to be interesting. The other part of it, too, is that China's a net importer, so they are susceptible, and I know that's one of their strategic touch points, that they have to maintain their net import of food. All that said, the Argentines have already signaled they're going after the Falklands, so that's probably going to happen. They've already signaled that the Strait of Malacca is going to be a contingency point. They already signaled that. Question is, how soon do you think all this is going to kick off? Because it looks like all this is being architected for the 2030 World War that they keep talking about.
It's interesting because China is talking about, and Thailand getting on with the Isthmus Canal in 2030. I'm like, you're way late. A little way late. You know what I mean? I think that they'll close Strait of Malacca much sooner. I don't know exactly when, but it won't be. I think it won't be much longer. You know, Paul Wolfowitz used to be the ambassador to Indonesia, and he used to tell me stories about Indonesia, like because he was the ambassador there. And now Indonesia does not like Israel, but they get along swell with the United States. So as you can see, people like Paul Wolfowitz, super Zionist, was he was the ambassador. And it's not a coincidence. Indonesia hates China. They will easily go along with anything that strangles China. I think that's my guess. And Indonesia's starting to cooperate with us pretty thickly. I think you're just gonna. I don't know when they'll close Strait of Malacca, but I would think sooner than later.
I was going to say, can I chime in? I just keep seeing more and more stuff pushing about Europe pushing the war with Russia. And I feel like that may be, if we go in with ground troops into Iran, I feel like the next thing that's going to happen is something in Ukraine more, or Europe.
Yeah. I mean, they're pushing now. The Zionists want to go, they want to go heads up with China and Russia to the last drop of American blood, because it's also a fight against the United States.
Right.
Right. And they're clear about it. This isn't like conspiracy theorists. They freaking say it with their mouths. You know what I mean? They say it constantly. They don't even hide it. As soon as I can literally take something they say and repeat it, and they'll say, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, anti-Zionist, or whatever, anti-Semitic." And I'm like, "Shut up." I don't even care anymore. That magic wand doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work to throw those things out there. We're talking about genocide of our country. I don't give a shit about their feelings. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. They're talking about destroying the United States, and not just China, but the United States, and basically all the countries as we know them, because they're the whole. They want to get rid of borders. I mean, they want the world to be their company, and have complete control with the AI and whatnot, and the digital everything, right? Digital prison and physical prisons. Look, right now they're starting to put high prices on travel for this. Here in Japan, they just increased dramatically the prices to fly to places like Thailand and the United States.
Well, that's their so Musk has talked about this ad nauseum, right? He's talked about universal basic income. And what's the first way to drive universal basic income? One,
food.
You take away people's ability to generate revenue, meaning jobs. Number two, you raise the taxation so people can't afford to pay their property taxes, their income tax, etc. Three, you increase the price of everything related to energy and consumables so they can't afford to buy anything. And guess what? You've got complete control of movement, and it doesn't take very long to do it. And for those holdouts that have paid off their house, you just raise the tax rate to the point where they can't pay it. The question that I have is, when is the average person going to get fed up with this and start to take matters into their own hands? Because if I look at what's going on just in Seattle, I'm like, you people the learning curve is flat. Like, you haven't figured out yet that they're purposely trying to drive business out of Washington State. I mean, they're purposely doing it. It's classic, right? It's right out of Pawns in the Game. It's the same script.
It is. It's very, very soft genocide. Genocide comes in different hardnesses, like on the Mohs scale, right? And there's the really soft ones where you just kind of change the conditions and people just kind of move out, or they just stop having babies, right? So you don't really quite notice it. Not loud enough to say that that's what's going on. And then there's the hard genocides where you're like, leveling Gaza, that sort of thing, which is very nakedly obvious. So they're doing some amalgam of these, like the death jab is a very firm genocide. You can see it. It's crystal clear.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't know how hard it would be, but when somebody else is talking, there's some feedback coming because of the delay. I think it's coming through your side. If you're not talking, would it be difficult to put your system on mute?
Oh, that's there you go.
Yeah, just when you're not talking, you can put it on mute, and then that way there's no feedback. Just a comment I had on all that stuff, and if ever anybody's not following Michael Yon, they need to be following him. He's got a massive amount of great information, and it's on time, relevant, and it's now what he's putting out. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and then taking in everything that you guys said. It's for me. It's hard not to look at what's going on with Trump and his administration and the decisions that he's making, not overlapping with the globalists, the Zionists, and the depopulationists. Everything that is happening right now, they're sitting on their hands, just watching, saying this is great because this is gonna engineer a food famine through fertilizer famine. It's hard not to look at it and say, is he part of this? Is he doing this on, following orders, doing this intentionally to be part of the depopulationist, globalist, Zionist plan to as Michael Yon said, perform the slow genocide through the fertilizer shortage? And that's kind of my take. That's what I'm seeing right now.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Have you guys seen the videos coming out of Spain recently? They've been showing massive amounts of people flooding. I think it's the Spanish outpost in the northern part of Africa. They're just getting overrun. And it fits what you're saying. I mean, I feel like that's what we're going to see. It's like Camp of the Saints times infinity once it gets going.
And now, Mike, when you want to talk, you got to unmute.
What's funny is I've got the noise reduction.
Yeah, I was just listening. I'm listening to you guys at Camp of the Saints. I've got
one of the
that
things
book
I would
here.
say is, Michael, what you were saying, and gentlemen, this is a multi-front soft coup, and what makes it so oblivious to a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people are starting to figure it out, but they're looking at one angle. But if we were to look at it at a kind of like a multi-front, you have the jabs, then you have the fertilizer, now you have the wars, you have straits that could get ready to close, which is going to affect all the fuel. So now you combine all those things all in once, and that's going to lead to all these civil wars that we've talked about, because there's so many corresponding factors that have been engineered to happen. It's basically at that point there's no turning back. Everything's already happened. Wars have started. And at that same time, we all know some of these wars, people aren't going to back down, because a lot of it's going to be what? Ego. We're not backing down. We're going to get what we want. You pissed us off. That's basically, if you look at pawns in the game, a lot of things that happen, some of those things, there was the egos, the righteousness of one group versus the other.
Yeah. I look at this like I look at COVID, and it's being done on a global scale. It's very well coordinated. Clearly they have a timeline and an order of battle that they are pressing through. And this brings me to this was actually a good segue, Chief, because this actually does jog my memory on something I want to talk about. And that is, and you're right, Michael, what Trump says and what Trump does are two entirely different things. Like you can't correlate that Trump's trying to, clean the swamp or, get rid of all the swamp creatures, when the next thing you know, he's actually attacking Iran, because that's completely counter to everything he said. And then at the same time, there's no correlation between Epstein and anything else, because nothing's been done. And Todd Blanche has come out and said, and I said this yesterday on Crypto Rich's show, that you can't apply anything to Trump because of Epstein. The fact that Todd Blanche came out and said it's not illegal to party with Epstein, well, you're right, it's not, but it is pretty much, it is a felony to rape, torture, dismember, and traffic children. I'm pretty sure that's a felony. and the fact that they're not pursuing it, and they've told us they're not pursuing it. Everything else outside of that is like all this conjecture that they're trying to, take on the city of London, blah, 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 all that nonsense. Look, the reality of the situation is that the EU doesn't have the forces or the production capacity to start a war with Russia. We don't have the capacity, the logistics, or the production to fight a war with anyone either. So at some point, this facade will fall apart. The question is, where and when does it fall apart? I ultimately don't think that they're going to be successful with anything other than the famine, because the famine's going to be long term. Like you said, the slow burn towards the genocide. That to me, if I was a betting man, I would say that's their primary effort is the famine, because that's going to take the world longer to recover from, and there's going to be more chaos because of it.
Well, I think the short term, I agree. I think the short term, though, before we get the famines fully rolling, is going to be economic impacts, massive economic impacts. I mean, I think once the oil prices continue to rise at the rate they're going up now, the next thing it's going to be is economic collapse. And I think then the famines follow that, is my 2 cents.
I think they go hand in hand.
Sure. Well, either way, yeah. But I think we're going to start seeing impacts, though, in the U.S. Before we will see famine in the U.S., we're going to see the economic impact first here, I think.
Well, and I think part of it too is they couldn't box us in with with COVID into a 15-minute city, but now it's like you make an energy issue where it's like it's too expensive to drive the grocery store. So maybe I'll walk, maybe I'll take my bike, maybe I'll get used to, staying within 10, 15 miles of my house. And that's the conditioning for, what's coming, and follow on from that, digital currency, track and trace, and off they go. They're just essentially it's COVID 2.0, but using energy as their fulcrum.
The lockdown mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not just that, but let's look at the, like you're saying, Scott, we had the whole psychological effect of COVID. There's, you had people that were like, yeah, I'm not getting the shot. I'm not wearing a mask. You can go fuck yourself. Right. Let's just be honest about it. There was the ones who just willfully went along. I mean, we all saw the pictures, people posting pictures on, oh, I got my 6th jab. Yeah. I'm traveling, I'm going to Germany. So I got my 6th Johnson & Johnson jab. I mean, I saw people doing that, people I knew. And, my family and I would just look at each other like, that's not good. And then along with that was a psychological effect where there's still people, if we all go out today, if you go out today in the United States, more in the northern states I've noticed when I've traveled, that are wearing a mask.
Oh, dude.
I just walked into Costco and the girl still had the plastic shield on. Oh, she's been wearing that plastic shield since 2020.
Oh, yeah. Walk around Seattle.
The whole
like every other person has a mask or a double mask on. Like, you people are completely brainwashed.
And that's not even to mention, the whole thing that's going on with the Western world with abortion and all those items.
Well, it goes into the whole mass formation psychosis kind of idea that they developed in COVID, and they're going to weaponize it with energy, and they'll turn it the same kind of what mass formation psychosis will be used to generate Karens that freak out about, you use too much gas, you're driving too far. They'll be, why do you have your air conditioner running at noon at 105 degrees outside? I mean, it'll be stuff like that.
Well, that I think that's downstream, right? I think the immediate effect is going to be the restriction on movement. Then will come the messaging around enforcement. Then will come the actual enforcement. Then will come with that the Karens that are, the brown shirts turning in their neighbors. Those all go hand in hand, because that's how it rolled out last time, right? They rolled out the messaging, and COVID was the quintessential, completely stupid messaging and narratives, and I was shocked that people went along with it. But it shows you just how much people buy into the narrative. And just since we're on that topic, I think there's something in the shot that makes people completely stupid. Sure. I really do.
At least some people.
I
the thing
well,
I think is what I think we need to do is be providing people. We've got a lot more people who are awake to psychological warfare now in our society than we did before COVID. And I think one thing we should be giving people is tools to help diffuse this when they start running into it, because we know it's going to be coming. So I don't know. That'd be my question to you guys.
I think that's why we have a channel called The Path Forward.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think, oh, go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead.
All right. So I think when you were talking about the stages, Colonel, I think some of the stages, one of the first ones, and I think Bruce, it was you. We talked about the famine and the fuel. I think the fuel shortage will lead very quickly. Like at first, you'll see the prices stack up, so it's going to be like a forced kind of quarantine on people. Michael, you had talked about that also. So it's basically going to be that stage where you're going to be forced to kind of quarantine down because fuel is going to get so expensive. It's going to be hard to get to where you have to go. So you're going to be taking fewer times out. More money is going to go into fuel, food, and
already is.
Right, exactly. So you're going to be spending more money on food when that time comes, as it is now, but it's going to escalate even further. Then what's going to happen is, as that time gets even closer, then we're going to start seeing, now here comes the fertilizer shortages. And it's going to be very quick. I think it's going to be within probably a 6-month period where things just keep ramping up and ramping up. And
hey, don't forget lab-grown meat. Don't forget that. Just in time for famine is lab-grown meat. Just in time. Can't forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we might also see is kind of not necessarily in stages, although there might be stages, but a lot of this overlapping and with this coming rise in food prices and food shortages is I think we're going to see the whole equity thing come back in to focus, and within that the implementation of some kind of universal basic income or CBDCs out of fairness and equity, and then also having incentives to go along with that. And then it can get complicated when it comes to inflation because they don't care about how much money they print, and they're not going to be printing money essentially if they go into this digitization and CBDCs. I think we kind of have to think about that multifaceted, multi-layered strategy coming into place where there's not necessarily stages. Maybe there are, but it kind of all starts happening and accelerating and coming in quickly, and just being on the lookout for that stuff. And again, Mike, when you want to talk, you got to unmute.
I'm good. I want to hear what you guys have to say too, because it's quite important.
Well, Michael, one of those things like, so I'm on the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, and we're hauling ass through the Malacca Straits, and we have a little boat that like turns, no shit, like right in front of us. We're doing 25 knots, and it's just like, dude, and I'm standing in the bow just going, I'm like sucking my teeth going, holy shit, we're going to cut this guy in half. And he barely misses us, and goes in. But the straits they're so small. In Malacca Straits, when we get, in and around Singapore, it's like, dude, yeah, you want to shut that down? Not hard.
Like, how many miles across is it?
It's like for Singapore Straits, just a couple, right? 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, it's like
tiny.
3 miles at best.
Wow.
It's super tiny. It's like constricted a lot more than even Malacca. Yeah. A lot more than Hormuz as well. And I mean, Hormuz is pretty constricted. Singapore Strait, I mean, good Lord, they can close that. Anybody can close that. A bunch of monkeys can close it.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know how to tee this one up, so bear with me. So the other piece that I'm seeing more of, and somebody just put it in the chat, which cracks me up because I'm literally just thinking about it, is clearly there's an order of battle that they're playing against, and Trump is clearly in on it. I mean, I hear this thing of, so there are two different deals going on right now, right? So I want to address both of these because these are questions I got over the weekend.
By the way, I can't see the chat, so if anybody's putting anything that they wanted me to see, I can't see it.
So this indictment of Comey, right? That's a good segue into that. This indictment of Comey. I want to remind everybody that the way the game is played in DC is they arrest one or two people, they prosecute and convict one or two people, and they say, this is it. This is the guy. This is the guy. This is the guy that did everything. Nothing else to see here. So until he's convicted, sentenced, and it's a real sentence, and there's other people rolled up like John Brennan, Obama, and all the rest of them, it's white noise. It's literally white noise. Because remember, these are the same people that told you there was no crimes involved in Epstein. There was no crimes involved with any of Epstein's frequent flyers. There was no, money laundering, bio research, etc., affiliated with that was, in the documentation. Of course, that was all debunked by now. But the same people that brought you that are the same ones that are talking about Comey. So until I see people convicted, it's just white noise. And it should tell you something that they indicted Comey the first time, the indictment was dropped, and now they moved to a different state. They've indicted him again. This time they've issued an arrest warrant. I think he gave himself up today, or was it yesterday? I can't remember which one. Anyway,
yesterday.
The point is that we're watching a script, right? And when I see guys like Bill Gates, Peter Thiel, and the rest of those malcontents going to Mar-a-Lago, which I think Bill Gates was just at Mar-a-Lago in the past 2 weeks, you have to ask yourself, what else are they working on, right? Because, and I want to remind everybody too that not Fast and Furious, but Operation Warp Speed happened under Trump's watch. COVID started under Trump's watch. And he still talks about Operation Warp Speed. So, and look, I know I'm going to take a bunch of different shit over this, but here's the bottom line. I'm going to call out the bad stuff and the good stuff. And thus far, I haven't seen a lot of good stuff, but I've seen a whole lot of bad shit. And until I start seeing some really good stuff, then I'll start buying into the program. But until then, I'm going to keep calling it out as I see it. And right now, I don't see a lot of good things happening. And I don't give two shits about James Comey. What I care about is Obama and Brennan and Holder and Clapper and Hayden and the guys that committed treason. So hopefully that answers some of the questions. Anyway, I was going somewhere with that. I completely lost my train of thought.
No, totally good. Scooter Libby was my grandfather. So, we're totally good with that.
All right. So, Michael, I got a question for you. The question is, what's the next order of battle we're going to see? What do you think is going to happen next? I think my gut's telling me it's going to be ground forces somewhere in Iran, probably Karg Island. And then we'll see mass casualties, U.S., and then I think the Strait of Malacca after that. And at the same time, the Falklands.
Yeah, it's a process war. And so, in other words, it's like it doesn't have a beginning and an end point. You know what I mean? There's no, just like World War I and World War II, this is actually still part of that. This is not separate. It's a river that's flowing. And when you start to see it as a river that's flowing and you start to understand how this river flows, it becomes a lot easier to predict the timing and whatnot, and the specifics you don't know, right? You're not going to know, are they going to do a ground attack yet or whatever? And that's very relevant if you're there and that's affecting you immediately, that sort of thing, obviously. But on the grand scale, on the grand strategy level, it's kind of irrelevant, right? What more relevant is what's the grand strategic goals that they're going, the big ones that affect us, like famine, right? But remember, the famine is actually not the end state goal. Famine is a is a sub strategic goal to create depopulation, right? So the death jabs, electricity, all kinds of things that can help us get to depopulation. Like look at these, just industrial strength abortion for generations now, right? So many methods, or boys or girls, girls or boys, that sort of thing. And so there's, go ahead. So there's many ways that depopulation, but ultimately what they want is a significant and dramatic and catastrophic depopulation. And keep in mind, like, here in Japan or across the United States or Europe, they'll say, well, people's they're going to lose their jobs, so therefore we should kill everybody. But they're using the same, they're talking out of the same different sides of their mouth, saying there's like the Japanese aren't having enough babies, they say, but actually the mall not far from me is like a giant nursery. I mean, it's filled with babies. Every time Masako and I go over there, it's like babies everywhere. I mean, like it's not like there's no babies in Japan. That's nonsense. And so, but what I'm getting to is the depopulation is not the end state goal. They want to create slavery. They want to create, basically, to enslave the remnant, right? With these smart cities and universal basic income. These are all down to ultimately just having serial numbered people, right? That have no rights whatsoever. And
I think they'll get part of the way down the road on that, Michael. To be,
they already are way down the road. Way down the road.
I mean,
do you have a credit card? Okay,
you're in societal adoption.
There you go.
Yeah, with societal adoption, right? There's going to be a point where I think people realize that it's a kill box, and it doesn't matter how far they get into it. And I'll just bear with me for a second on this one.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how far they get into this, because there's a lot of ways to take down data centers without blowing them up. You don't need to blow them up to take them down. You know what I'm saying? And at some point, the rubber's going to meet the road there, and you're going to see data centers taken offline. It'll be the secure data centers, which I think is why they're building a huge data center underneath the ballroom, because they know that that's going to happen, and they're trying to hedge their bets. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that data obviously is Fort Knox, the ultimate Fort Knox, right? And
it's more valuable than gold.
Yeah, I mean, they can, obviously, we all know they can mate that up with drones and everything else under the sun, and really go to town. And they're clearly already doing things like that. They're clearly already doing it. I'm sorry, I didn't mute the microphone when you were talking.
No, it's okay. How many androids do you think they're making right now that can operate autonomously? I was told this morning that there's hundreds of thousands already that have been produced that are set up to work autonomously. They're already full tilt to move production to completely autonomous production across the globe. It's happening right now. So I think they're well on their way. The question is when is humanity going to figure it out and start to push back? I mean, there's going to be a certain part of the population that's like, everything's awesome, let's sign up. Look at how easy this is.
Right? And that's the key, is that they've crafted the scenario to make it, incredibly difficult for anyone to resist. And I think that's the thing we have to figure out, is how do we resist without, losing everything. I mean, that's the problem right now, is unless you've lost everything, you're not going to probably give up everything you have.
But here's the thing: you've already lost it.
Yes, I'm not arguing.
You've already lost it, right?
But we have to get it. We have to figure out a way to give people an ability to resist that doesn't destroy them. That's what those
things don't. They're not complementary. It's one or the other. You can't have it both ways. This is the mindset that got us here. The mindset that I don't have to give anything up to go fight the fight. You're going to give something up.
Yes.
And the reality that you have to ask yourself is, what's more important, my freedom, my livelihood, or stuff? Because stuff's not important.
Well, I think the key is, related to this specifically, is when they start coming down with the energy restrictions that we all have talked about already, that's where the resistance needs to happen, like society wide. That's where everybody needs to say, we're not doing it.
But they're not going to do it overtly. They're going to do it through rationing, through shortages.
Yes.
That's what we've been talking about, right?
Right. But I'm saying even then, that's when people have to resist.
Yeah. So listening to you guys talk, one of the things that comes to mind is the ignorance on what we're talking about. We're in an echo chamber right now, and we're a very small minority of the population. Just talking to people out in public, COVID's over. We're, everything's back to normal, or pretty much back to normal. Yeah, just out in public, talking to people in the different places I go around town, whether it's the gym or some store or the hardware store or wherever it is on the block, whatever. When I bring up just the fertilizer issue, which ultimately leads back to, the intent to depopulate, with what Michael Jan was stating, which is that's not the end state. The end state is a control grid, a panopticon, where you can adjust the numbers as needed going into the future. And in order to be able to determine the number and adjust the numbers, you have to have the population under control. Control means enslaved. But my point is, bringing it back full circle, is that the information just needs to continue to be spread. And it's not being stated mainstream, obviously, yet, that the intent is depopulation, enslavement, and then continued calling to whatever number that they need. Most of the public has no comprehension or no idea that that's what's actually happening, and we're doing the slow march towards that. And just like Colonel Murray said, they're not going to implement it all at once. We're not going to wake up in the morning and there's going to be camps everywhere and some kind of slave control grid system with CBDCs. That's going to be implemented slowly. It's going to be incentivized. It's going to be coerced. It's going to be the carrot and the stick thing, just like all over again with COVID. We're all gone.
Taking advantage of the blissfully unaware.
There you go.
There it is.
Yeah. So we as truth speakers, even though we might not know the 100% of the truth, we're trying to speak what we know. We got to continue to spread the information. And that means all the listeners on here talking to people. They may look at you like you got three eyes, or you shot their dog when you pass on this information, but that's what's going on. You got some very smart guys here like Michael Jan and the Colonel and everybody else on the show trying to spread the information. Everybody else needs to do that too.
Yeah. Again, this is part of the challenge with doing this, right? Is how do you reach all the diverse audiences? How do you reach? Because we reach people over 40 through this show. I don't reach anybody under 20. Maybe once in a while I'll get somebody between 20 and 35, but it's a very rare thing. And that's really the demographic that we want to, plug into. But they've been trained through social media to have a very short attention span. And they've been trained to, again, this all goes back to education. They've been trained that, number one, if the government's paying attention to you and the government's monitoring your comms, well, don't worry about it because you're not doing anything wrong. It's only when you're doing something wrong, right? So they teach them that surveillance is okay. They teach them not to pay attention. They teach them not to critically think. They teach them to trust their feelings versus what they see in front of them. So there's a whole host of issues around just reaching all of the different audiences that we need to reach for people to wake up. And it's one thing for a bunch of old farts like us to be sitting around talking about how bad things are. It's another thing to get people to pay attention to it and actually start to take action. Because the next question that comes along with that is, what do I do with all this information? How do I turn that into being ready? And the reality is, and by the way, I read an article today in the New York Times, which shocked me, because when I first saw the title of the article, I was like, oh, this is another idiot that doesn't know what he's talking about and it was about bug out bags. And the article was literally, it's called the prepper. The title is called The Prepper Delusion. What keeps us safe isn't the stuff we pack in a stockpile. And the guy was, believe it or not, you read through the article and I'm like, this guy doesn't know shit. But as I start getting in the article, he's actually talking about the right thing. And the premise of his article, which is the premise of the show, is turning adversity into actionable items. And
Yes.
that the only way you're going to really survive anything that's a contingency is if you have a strong, resilient community around you that can help you out and work together. And he literally said everything we've been saying for the past 5 years. Literally, he said it in one article. And it was actually very well written, even for the New York Times. So the way people can take this information and what they need to do is start working in building a resilient community. That's why I talk about line of sight and sphere of influence. Those things are going to be vitally important when all this stuff comes to pass. And it won't be overnight. It'll be slow erosion. And look at what they're doing in blue states right now, especially Michigan, Washington, California, and Oregon. Go look at what those legislatures and so just in Washington state, they passed an unconstitutional income tax. The governor has literally pushed all release of information through the governor's office so he can slow walk any information getting out to the public. The city of Seattle has basically taxed out, along with the rest of the state, they've taxed icon of businesses out of the state. Starbucks is leaving Washington state. Every bit of that is by design. And it's a slow walk so that they can slowly move people towards state ownership of everything in the state. And so their excuse will be, well, businesses have left. We're having a shortage. We don't have enough grocery stores. So the state will step in and open state-run grocery stores. Where have you heard that before? New York? And then, well, because we don't have the tax base, the state's going to step in and they're going to take over private ownership and they're going to maintain all the farmlands. They're going to maintain all the private property. That's how it goes. It's a slow walk. They're going to either tax you out, they're going to price you out, or they're just going to step in and take it through eminent domain. That's how the game's played. So the point in there is, at what point do you realize that's happening and start to organize in your community? Because this is what needs to happen. And this is the reality that most people don't want to face. Your community is going to have to band together. So when they show up, the IRS, the state, the county sheriff, whatever mechanism they use for confiscation and enforcement, they're going to have to be met with armed people that say, no, you're not taking anything. You're going to leave here and you're not coming back. And then you have to be willing to double down and live with a 24/7 guard, deal with drones, deal with constant probing of your perimeter, and you're going to have to defend it, which means you could lose your home, your life, or anything else. That's the question you have to ask. How far down the road are you going to let this happen before you start to take action? Because that's really where this is heading. Just saying. I was going somewhere again and completely lost the other point.
No, I think you're spot on. It's totally good. Basically, what you're going to see is, the masses are going to run for comfort. It's like what I just want comfort. I just want my DS3. I want my all my cable. I want my stuff. I want Deal Dash. I want Uber Eats. And they're going to keep going there until it runs out, and then it totally stops. And you have those resilient folks that understand this message, that want to get to a point of building communities inside. But truthfully, a lot of those they need to maybe move to find a community that will be realized, and inside that mindset of, hey, let's build some self-reliance. Let's build a local community that we can do stuff. So for me, it's doctors. I've got chicken keepers. I've got, Navy SEAL snipers. I've got all that stuff in my close knit community, but not everyone has that. But it's one where they need to seek it out, and if they need to move to make that happen, that may be something to do.
Yeah, the model is eerily similar to early 1900s, 1910s, 1920s, and 30s Russia and Ukraine, where the maybe you just at a poverty level or slightly above, but the food goes to the blue cities, and the communities, the rural areas get their food, their stuff, their crops get confiscated and controlled, government owned, government operated. The model is the same, and then now with added technology, that's one thing to start looking for. And I think, as a couple guys have already stated, we're already progressing towards that with Signal in places like Washington State, just like the Colonel mentioned.
No, they're trying to push us into Hunger Games. End of story. I mean, it's across the board. That's where they want to go.
I think Scott, kind of what you said. Obviously, you have your community. I've talked to a lot of people in my community, and I've kind of come to a big realization. I don't know about what the audience thinks. I would like to see their comments on this one. But in my neighborhood, I have a lot of people who aren't conservative, and they'll say somehow, I can't believe Trump did this. I'm like, oh man, I don't even get into an argument anymore. I just let it go. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't give a shit. Everybody's got their opinion. I kind of keep it at that.
But your point's valid, Chief. At some point, this will cross party lines, and people
right,
and
it will, right, definitely.
And correct. Where I'm going with this is, though, when you look at your neighborhood and you start realizing, holy shit, dude, I'm surrounded by Indians. Then you start thinking, okay, the only way you're really going to have that cohesion in a neighborhood is have like-minded individuals that set up that community and kind of make sure it stays that way.
Well, the other part of your point, which I think is valid, is we're past the point of trying to convince people.
Oh no, that's not going to happen. You can't
convince them. They're just they're gone, right?
No, they've checked out.
Yeah,
they've checked out.
Yeah.
And there's no going back. There's no telling them otherwise. They'll walk in the grocery store. They see the New York Times headlines, and they lose their shit. USA Today, oh, that's their Bible. Yeah, they love that shit.
Yeah. Troop, welcome aboard. Sorry it took a second to get to you.
I gotta go because it's 9 and I gotta do something.
No worries,
9.
brother.
Right.
Thanks for jumping on,
thanks
Michael.
For having me on.
Good to see you,
see you, Michael.
I hope to see you next week. Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Have a
Michael.
good one, Mike.
All right, Troop, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I came in on the tail end of that and working with people. As you guys know, I love the common man and the homeless guy on the street. And I can tell you right now, there's no Obama, there's no Trump, there's no Biden, there's no MAGA, there's no blue cloud or whatever. You would think that homeless people would be more liberal, and in a lot of ways they're a product of the kind of the liberal mind virus that enabled a lot of the decisions that that they made that brought them to the level that they are. But when they're hungry or when they're injured or when they need to help each other out, which they do, they I would say probably fight with each other 50% of the time and help each other out 50% of the time. If a foreign invader, if somebody not part of the clan or part of the camp or part of the know who's who comes in and they cause trouble, that person usually gets circle kicked, within moments. And so, as to your point, Chief, the pulling neighborhoods together in peacetime when there's no famine and there's no crisis is a waste of time. And I've seen trends, though, over the past 10 or 12 years where there's a big difference between a homeowner, even in a poor neighborhood where people own their homes, but they're low end homes. What is it, like Baltimore Avenue or whatever on the Monopoly board, but they still have a stakeholdership or an ownership in what little they have. And
Yep.
this trend of building these super complexes, and this is the uniparty, where they'll go into a mainly a plus R, plus Republican district, and they will start pounding out 2 and 3 and 5,000 unit apartment complexes. So now everybody's just in a little cracker box. And if you're in a cracker box and you're not going to be buying a bunch of stuff from the shit ferry to fill up your studio apartment or your 1 bedroom apartment, it makes it a lot easier to bring in people who are on Section 8 or food stamps or whatever, and not to judge anybody who's on any of the assistance programs, but just to look at it objectively. If you're on an assistance program that provides your shelter and your food and your medical care and all the other benefits, you're not going to step out against this globalist agenda because you've already subjected yourself to it. You're already subservient to it. Yeah. So when we're working with our neighbors, when shit hits the fan and, hey, Bob, I'll help you put on your roof. I see a tree fell over, on your patio. Let's cut it up and turn it into firewood. I traded chicken eggs for firewood and a whole pallet full of bricks, with my neighbor, because they had the means to have a big tree in their front yard and a bunch of extra bricks from a project. That integrated community thing doesn't wash too well when nobody has nothing. They're all living in essentially government-sponsored tenements, and they don't have any resources to share. It becomes a black market thing, and maybe eventually they'll trade food or diapers off a WIC card for a bottle of Jack Daniels or whatever. But that isn't the growing out of the bad situation in the community. That's just reinforcing the criminality of the inner city and the value system that we associate with inner city crime and decay. Moral decay, civic decay. The decay of the republic. I'm sad that Michael left because he made a comment. I've commented on this myself about the number of marijuana shops and what this does with a populace when you enable them to just be lackadaisical. Yeah, whatever, man, it's cool. Give me another hit off the pipe. I'm okay. When's my food stamps show up? And that just makes us so much weaker as we're heading into this, that it's designed to make it a lot more difficult for us to dig out of it. And that's a real threat that no matter how much we try to influence, we're going to be facing, like you said, Steve, quoting the Matrix, and people that are a part of the system, even though they're imprisoned by it, they'll fight to protect it. They have literally programmed them to be anti-success. So we're a dying breed. People that wanted to have a family, the traditional values, work hard, shoot for retirement, believe in your republic enough to make sacrifices and put away today's needs or today's wants for tomorrow's goals. That there's 2 generations now that have passed that haven't had that behavior inculcated into their mindset. And when we start dying off, the probability of us sliding towards a communism or authoritative state is significant, especially now with the central bank digital currency and flock cameras and Palantir and and all this other stuff. It frightens me.
Oh no, you're spot on, because look, if you look at DoorDash or Uber Eats, don't you think that is designed completely to get people anesthetized to the point where they'll just accept having things delivered to their door because they make it so convenient? That's all part of the plan. It's all part of the process. That's how they keep you anesthetized, is they keep feeding you different conveniences to make your life easier. And it's amazing what people will put up with given all of those conveniences. And it's amazing. It's amazing how much they will go to protect them. And I'll give you an example. So my son-in-law, smart kid, right? Smart guy. But I said, we were talking about living in Washington. I'm like, I left because I can't stand the fucking politics here. I can't stand the people. They're completely anesthetized. They cannot see the forest through the trees. And I said, and that's not even the worst part. The worst part is they're literally cheering all of this technocracy and this slavery. They're cheering it on. And he goes, well, if you leave, how are you supposed to fight the system? I go, if you abide by all the conveniences and you take all the conveniences, you're enabling the system. And I said, if there's only one of you trying to fight the system, that's not a fight. You're just an ant. They're going to crush you with the boot. You need to organize and have people that are willing to fight the system. And the look on his face was priceless because it just didn't register. That whole concept doesn't register because they're so anesthetized by all of the different conveniences that are in front of them. And all these things, people think that all of these companies are organically created. They're not. I'm telling you, Facebook was LifeLog. It was created by the CIA. Google was created by DARPA and the CIA. The same with Instagram and Snapchat and all the rest of them. By the way, where was Snapchat when I was in college? Oh my God, that would have been fantastic when I was in college. The pictures only last 10 seconds. Don't worry about it.
It should be fine.
Here's the other part of that is kind of just like Troop said, not knocking anybody that's on any kind of government assistance or benefits. I am not knocking anybody that has that. However, when these control mechanisms start to come more into play, in 33% of the American public, give or take, are on some sort of government assistance. So when the control grid starts to slowly get implemented, whether that's, hey, now you're going to receive your veterans benefit disability check in CBDCs, that's just the way it's going to be. These things are going to probably start coming in. Hey, if you want your benefits, you got to do this, or you got to do that, or you got to comply with this. So there may come a day when you have to say, well, am I going to do what they want me to do and use the system that they want me to use, or am I going to go it on my own and forego that? Because I think that there's a potential for that day to come.
Oh, they've already started with our government mandated open ID or whatever that shit is, Steve. We're in the system. This fucking digital identity thing.
Yeah, you're already in the system. If you were in the military, you're already screwed. Your DNA, your bioinformation, your retinal scans, it's all there. So you're already screwed.
Well, not just that, but the what do you call it? The hacking. When Opium got hacked, everybody with everything all the way up to TSSCI. And
the
goodbye.
Defense personnel, DPS, whatever.
And they come back and everybody got a letter. Oh well, we're gonna fund you for experience for 1 year to monitor your credit. And
they weren't after that.
No, sorry. Exactly. We were all looking around like we were in the office and everybody was laughing about it. I was still in the military time, and we were laughing. As me and a whole bunch of other senior enlisted guys, and we had one officer in there. We were taking care of him. Somebody's got to babysit, right? And
I knew it was coming, Chief. I knew it was there somewhere.
Hey, man, you know it's coming, buddy. So, but no, we're sitting there and we're all laughing. And we're all looking at each other like, they're not going to use this for a while, man. This is like a 20-year wait. And, a couple of people couldn't even understand it because the command was trying to understand how to brief it to people like, hey, this is what you're going to get. And I'm like, why are you even going to have a brief? Just tell them, hey, man, it happened. Just keep an eye on your stuff. Just keep it that way. Because, they're not going to touch this stuff until they absolutely need it. It's probably going to be 10, 20 years down the road.
I don't think it's that far away. I think it's closer.
So what happens
when it happened back then?
Oh, yeah. So
there's
hang on.
Go ahead.
Hang on. So Puke Bucket, thanks for that, by the way. He said, already mentioned, but with shoring up South American energy plus our energy, is it possible that this Iran thing is over punking out China, Europe over energy supply, ? What are your thoughts? That's for you, Troop. That's why I stopped you.
That's plausible, but Iran, 80% of Iran's revenue is oil and distillates and things that are related to oil, plastics and stuff like that. And 80% or more of who Iran trades with are India, China, Turkey, their local neighbors, right? So this will hurt China a little bit, but I wrote a big long Substack post last night or the night before about the UAE and their position in all of this. All of the embargoes against Iran don't mean anything if they can just set up a bunch of front companies in Dubai and then just basically take the oil from Iran, float it right across the street to the UAE or even Bahrain, and then put a different flag on it or say, oh, now this oil is under a different broker that's not under U.S. sanctions. We're not really going to trace back where the oil came from, but it originated in Dubai or the UAE now. And and it's going to go to China. So the sanctions haven't hurt China. The blocking of the Gulf, and remember, we're south of the Strait of Hormuz. We're south of the choke point, the U.S. naval blockade, but they're still preventing ships from going in and out. This is going to have a material impact on Iran, but also on Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and the UAE and even Qatar, because they don't have enough pipeline capacity. They don't have enough trucks and tankers. They don't have enough derelict oil tankers that they can just fill up with all of these distillate byproducts. And eventually they're going to have to start shutting down wells. And once you do that, there's like a whole stand down process. It's going to have a little bit of an impact on China and a little bit of an impact on Europe. But a lot of the things that are coming out of the Gulf, mainly the fertilizer and the chemical derivatives from the processing, you can get those from other oil producing nations. You can get that stuff from Venezuela, from the United States, from wherever, right? And businesses are not going to just wait around for some type of diplomatic solution between the United States and Iran. They're already pivoting to get these materials from alternative suppliers. And it doesn't really take a whole lot of effort for an oil refinery that traditionally only does certain types of distillates to go and start developing nitrogen-based fertilizers or other products if there's a market for it. And they will do that on the commitment of whoever the customer is. Look, we're not getting our shit from Iran right now. Was it Qatar or somebody declared force majeure, which is a fancy way of saying, oh, act of war, act of God. Sorry, we can't, fulfill our commitments. So these purchasers of these products, including China and the European nations, they're going to source these products from somewhere else. And in order to incentivize these alternative sources to produce the materials that they need, they're going to sign long-term contracts with them. So once the ink dries on that, 2-year, 3-year, 5-year commitment to get, instead of getting your fertilizer or your plastic pellets or your whatever from Iran or Kuwait or wherever, you're going to get them from somewhere else that's not even in the Gulf. Even after this blockade ends and the Iranians unplug their wells and things are flowing again, and the tack time on traffic and sequencing of tankers and and everything renormalizes in 6 to 10 months, they're still going to lose a massive amount of their market share because those commitments to make those materials don't have contracts to fulfill now. So they're going to be right back where they started, and that's not really going to fuck China so much. Because, like I said, China has primacy in a lot of countries to even develop the industry they need to get the raw materials that they're looking for, and they have a massive amount of, no environmental, no woke Congress, no green people trying to file lawsuits against them, plenty of labor, governments that they basically own, and plenty of technology to put these things in place in a relatively short period of time. So what the Iranians are going to probably be doing is, remember, they have a lot of gold. Pretty much everything they sell to Turkey pays them in gold. So they have a massive amount of gold, like tons and tons, hundreds of tons of gold. They're going to be using that and their idle workforce to build as many pipelines and railroads and shoreline terminals, like in the not the Black Sea, what's that other sea? The Caspian Sea, to try to route around to get to China. That's going to take them 3 to 5 years to do that. So, there's a long recovery time here, but I expect them to do that and even route all the way out of the mouth of the Gulf, so they're closer to the south end, the southeast end of their country. Is this going to affect China? It's going to affect everybody from a business disruption perspective. And there's definitely going to be suffering with these other countries that buy their fertilizer, from the Gulf state nations just because they're fucking close. I mean, they're just north of them. So it is going to have a material impact on a lot of different countries. But to say that the U.S. is, dropping their dick on the table and going, haha, look at what we can do. I don't see that being a primary driver. I see that being a second order benefit of this, because it forces China into a position where they're more likely to start vassal messaging of what the United States wants for Iran, meaning they're going to feel enough pain and they have enough pull with Iran to help get Iran to agree to whatever it is the U.S. wants. And we know the Iranians aren't going to honor whatever it is, but they'll say, Uncle, we'll, okay, open the strait. We won't build nukes. We will, we'll do whatever you want. And then they'll go back to, business as usual 6 months from now, or they'll be good until there's a regime change in the United States. And then, the same thing will happen. So the short answer to your question is there is some leverage that the United States has on China and the European nations, the Bank of London or whatever, as a result of what we're doing. But I don't think that's a primary driver of why we're doing it.
I don't disagree with that. There's a lot to unpack there. Just saying.
Oh yeah, it's pretty complex. And the other thing to add to that, I just Patrick said that the UAE has declared that they're going to exit OPEC. I mean, that's major. And if you look at Bahrain, their fucking GDP is like minus 134% to their debt ratio. Their GDP to debt ratio is greater than the United States. They're like the richest little tiny nation island on the planet, and somehow they run their finances like a bunch of leftists. So they're going to probably go the same direction that the UAE does. And if Bahrain and the UAE both leave OPEC, the price of oil is just going to free fall, because that means that they can make as much, they can produce as much as they want, which is going to fuck Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iran. It's going to fuck over everybody in the Gulf nations if that happens. So expect to hear some news on that forthcoming. They're basically taking ownership of their own future.
Well, not just that though. One of the things I would throw in there is that's going to throw a lot of tension between the Gulf states. And I think that's something that has to be, looked at and kind of monitored, because once that happens, because, I know you're talking about with the whole UAE thing. That was what, 2-3 days ago when they came out and said, hey, we're moving out from OPEC. So I think if you have that where OPEC starts disintegrating, it's going to start causing problems, because now the countries are going to start competing. And as you said, hey, I got a sale. I'll offer you 10%, 20% off a barrel of oil. The other one comes in and says,
but that's down the road.
It starts escalation.
No, it's a race to the bottom.
Right, exactly.
And truthfully, for it costs them $5 to $10 to pull a barrel of oil out of the ground. It's that easy for them. Not like South Texas, where it's like 25 a barrel, maybe, if you have a good well. But for these guys, they can undercut each other all the way down, to a point that it just dumps the oil market to the ground.
But I think the challenge there is that they've got to be able to get the oil out of the Gulf.
Yeah, true. It's got to be able to go someplace. But it's also one of those two, you kind of look at, okay, well, what kind of drivers, if I'm going to pay $110 for a barrel, or I'm going to pay 50, what am I going to do as a country or, sovereign power to influence the ability to get that $50 a barrel oil out?
Yeah, Troop, I'd be interested to see if you have something to say about this. I heard some reports that there's been a lot of trades going on in Chinese yuan. Mm-hmm. So that's mm-hmm. I think a lot of this is what this might be about, is threatening the petrodollar too. What do you know about that?
what are those guys called? The Hawalas or whatever? Their own little shadow cash only banking system. They're money traders. They operate like an Arab Western Union, and they've been in business for decades and decades. But it's essentially a group of financiers that will trade in non-controlled money to transact oil shipments, like from Iran to wherever. And it doesn't matter if it's the yuan, or the brick dollar, or gold, or the dinar, or whatever. It's an uncontrolled. It's kind of like, think of Bitcoin, but more in a parallel traditional financial network, but off the books. And so I wouldn't say it's relevant that China would be wanting to trade in their own currency. It's more relevant that China has no compunction when it comes to using these hawalas or whoever they are, these kind of unregulated banking and cost transfer mechanisms in order to pay for the resources that they need and fund the shadow fleets that are required to get that oil, out of the embargo areas into their ports. And there's really no way that the U.S. can really control that. I mean, we don't. I think our Navy's pretty safe wherever they decide to park a carrier battle group. But there's a lot of fucking ocean out there, and if you have 75 tankers that are headed towards China, how many naval ships do you have to interdict on that? So how China pays for their oil outside of the system, to me, it's not really a material thing. It's like we already know they're doing that. So the method that they're doing it is really kind of just an academic discussion.
Got it. Okay, the number one lieutenant colonel's gone. The number two lieutenant colonel's got to take over.
Oh, geez.
Oh boy.
Well, I was going to tap on one thing to what Trooper said was.
Sorry, I missed that. So
I
you'll have to
recommend
bring me up to speed.
I recommend listening to a guy on YouTube.
You're being
Market
subverted.
Sniper. The Market Sniper on YouTube is like a combination of Mike Yon with excellent stock or investment advice, and he has pointed out exactly kind of what you were saying, Troop, about the threat to the petrodollar with the UAE leaving, the current setup with OPEC, and I think that's the real deal. Is that this is going to result in the petrodollar collapsing?
Correct.
And that will magnify our economic problems in the U.S. It will magnify food famine issues in the U.S. And it'll just increase pressure on us here tremendously. And I kind of think that, you saw this earlier this week, the Iranian guy that was running, the foreign minister running to all the different countries, including Russia. And I got to believe they're all sitting there going, okay, how do we've got the chance to get the U.S. over a barrel. How do we do it? And I think that's what they're going to try to do, but we'll see.
Well, not just U.S. dollars, but EU dollars flowing in. And remember, the UAE, Dubai is, like fucking Hong Kong of the Arab world, right? I mean, that's the financial crown jewel of that whole thing. That's like their connection to the outside world. And that's where all of the illicit goods come through. That's where all of the illicit transactions are settled. And so the Dubai, I don't see the UAE doing anything that's overtly undermining or designed to undermine the U.S. dollar. But I do see the UAE and Bahrain going, hey, you know what? This is what we know. We know you need us, and we know your enemies need us. So they're kind of like the Switzerland of the Arab world. The Iranians need them. The Europeans need them. The United States needs them. The APAC countries need them. China needs them. And I could see them just being the omniscient and emotionally indifferent financiers of transactional commerce. So it's going to be a free for all, and that I think is a good thing. Even though it takes away the teeth of the petrodollar, it is the type of capitalism that I think most of us traditionally recognize, which is supply and demand, the highest bidder, the best product, and the longest, the most reliable delivery mechanism wins.
the longest and the most reliable difference delivery system, and that's what she said.
I was just sitting here thinking the artist known as Jesse on TikTok. The guy cracks me up. He cracks me up on X all the time. But
he gives you a run for your money,
dude. It's like every night. He's like, every night I pray for a really big solar storm or a sunspot. Just too funny because I think all of us see the same thing, right? In order for things to change, this system has to collapse. It can't be a controlled demolition. It has to collapse outside of their control so they lose control. That's how this has to go down. I'd love to say that we can fix the system from within, but that's just not real. Given everything we're seeing right now, the only way to wrestle control away from these people is for something cataclysmic like that to happen that would completely wipe the slate clean. Dude, are a lot of people going to die? Yeah, they're going to die either way. So it is what it is.
Can we put Elizabeth Warren at the stake?
Dude,
as the martyr.
You know why I don't worry about politicians? I'll tell you exactly why. It's the same reason I don't worry about the King of England. You know why? They don't know how to do anything.
They're fucking retarded.
Nothing. They're
don't worthless.
Know yeah.
Agreed.
The other thing I heard somebody just kind of crunching this scenario in their head, when it really starts to get rough, all those ex-Rangers and spec ops guys they got working for them, who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be in charge when it starts getting supplies start dwindling in the bunker and other bad things start happening? It ain't going to be Elizabeth Warren.
Dude, this is how the game's played. They go in the bunker, you hear one shot, and then the rest of the crew figures out who's in charge, and then they survive. Problem solved. That's how it'll go. How many? Let me ask you a question. How many people do you think are going to give their lives for Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos or even Elon?
0.
They do it now because they're getting paid, but when they're not getting paid and all that bounties there in the bunker, it's going to be a little different.
I've said this before and it bears repeating. How much do you think people are going to care about your programs, your pronouns or your sexual orientation when you're starving? Probably not a lot. So same thing. Yeah. Let's see where we're at. We're at an hour and a half. I don't want to get into the next topic because it's a 2-hour conversation.
What is the next topic? Just give us a chance.
Well,
teaser.
It's going to be the whole James Comey thing. I did my monologue, but I never asked anybody what the thoughts were about James Comey, if that's going to go anywhere. And then there's also the whole Erica Kirk thing. Crypto Rich asked me about Erica Kirk yesterday. He goes, "You want to talk about her?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a very short conversation. She's CIA." Any questions?
Yep, done.
Yeah.
So, Troop, you're shaking your head. Start us off with James Comey because let's dive into the rabbit hole, baby.
Okay. Well, first of all, fuck that guy and everybody related to him. But I think they're spinning this off 2 years into the administration to try to give the people, a little bread and circus just before the midterms. But do you really think there's going to be any accountability? I mean, they have the January 6th commission pegged dead to rights for violating law, and those guys are still voting in Congress. I mean, there's so many other incontrovertible evidence types of criminal cases that the DOJ could be focusing energy on, and they're going to go after this fucking asshole for his rock painting that he made, 4 or 5 years ago. It's bullshit. So that's what I think on that. And the other thing is a guy like that, a guy like Comey, you know how that goes, guys. If there's any perceived risk that he's going to get put under the bright light, he's going to fucking wake up, from suicide of 18 bullets to the forehead, self-inflicted. He's too much of a liability to be allowed to even go under, not anything further than a deposition. So I don't see that going anywhere. Now, will he get eliminated if there's really a risk of him testifying or try to save his own skin, they'll fucking take him out. I mean, remember, the same people that were guarding Epstein, would be guarding him. So I don't really see a bright future for him if he's put into custody. But I don't think he will be. So that's just a game to put pressure on him. And as far as Erica Kirk goes, I remember she was a very accomplished woman before she met Charlie Kirk, before she got involved in this. So she's definitely in the system. I wouldn't underestimate her, but at the same time, most of us have seen violence, firsthand. And I could see from a trauma perspective, even somebody who's as steel resolved as Erica Kirk, and not knowing the psyop or whether this was a big fake thing, with the Trump shooting, that if she wasn't aware that was theater, how that could have traumatized her when, that one little short segment where her security team's escorting her out. And I think it is kind of a little bit heavy handed to just, fuck that bitch, whatever. Now, as far as like Erica Kirk as an entity, not as a person, but as an entity, she's definitely in leading Turning Point. They've definitely pivoted from Charlie Kirk, who was influencing young minds and making a difference. He wasn't making Republicans, he was making independent thinkers. And she's part of the narrative cabal. So Turning Point's definitely changed under her leadership, and I think we can all map exactly where it's going. But I do still have a little bit of humanity in my heart, and I can separate the difference between even somebody like Erica Kirk, is still subject to emotional trauma when she's not a soldier. She's a general. She's not a soldier. I'll put it that way. Right. And so her skill set is not designed around direct violence. I mean, there's people who direct people to commit violence, and then there's people who understand violence. And I don't really think she understands violence at that level that she was faking her, her emotional response. At least that's my opinion.
Right. Well, I'm going to jump in with bullshit. And truthfully, if you're going to grunge fuck anybody, is it going to be Hillary Clinton or Erica Kirk? So, you make your own decision.
That's a fair
And from
observation.
that, I mean, you jump back into it's such a mess. And it's one of those like, she is no shit, a CIA asset. And if she's going to play the part to the T and just move on from there, end of story.
That's fair.
I could have lived my whole life without that visual in my head ever.
I know, dude. I have seen you with Hillary.
Yeah, that's just I don't need that in my head.
That would be like the ultimate test, wouldn't it? How American are you?
Yeah, Murray. How the fuck do you think they got with the Chelsea?
We need to steal some.
That wasn't Billy Clinton's kid.
We need to steal some Terrence Pop AI clips of Hillary that they regularly put on their show.
Hey,
well, here's what I was going to say. What I was going to say is that number one, what the
never let fighter pilots on your podcast,
especially after vodka. Yeah, the public's response to her and the vitriol is because the Charlie Kirk murder story doesn't add up.
No.
And get away from Candace, right? Candace doesn't matter in this. She's got her own issue. Now she's getting sued. And frankly, I think she deserves it for some of the crazy things she said. But the point is, the blowback is from the fact that none of the story around Charlie Kirk's death adds up. And the fact that she swoops in and she takes over CEO, that's the other thing that people are reacting to. And, her going on. And by the way, what is with the baseball caps, right? She's got the whole baseball cap of freedom or whatever it was. Like, none of that stuff plays well to the American public, especially when somebody else clearly wrote the speech for her and she's reading the teleprompter. Cringe, by the way. You can't expect the public to buy into that. Especially when you lecture the public, you're not going to get a good response, right? And when you add it to all these other inputs that and outputs that come out that the public doesn't buy into, she's never going to be trustworthy in the public eye. That's the reality. And it has nothing to do with anything other than optics, because the optics matter. And when the baseline story doesn't add up, the public will never trust you, ever trust you, right? That was our problem in Iraq. You know, we came in and said, we're liberators. We're going to give you freedom. We're going to give you a government. And then it turned into the Bush show, right? The public never trusted us. It didn't matter what we said. The public never trusted us, ever. They still don't, and rightfully so. So if you look at public opinion, the way it comes out, you see why she's failing miserably at the information war. It's simply because the public looks at it and goes, yeah, you're CIA. That's how it is. So I don't see that story ending well. And for the love of God, would the FBI just tell the world who really did it? Was it Mossad? Was it MI6? Who was it? Was it the CIA? Just say it. Everybody knows it wasn't this Tyler Robinson kid. I mean, let's do some simple calculus here. He's got a Mauser rifle that's a 30-06. He's going to disassemble the rifle, drop his screwdriver on the roof, jump off the roof, magically reassemble his rifle, which, by the way, I'm a gunsmith and I have a hard time disassembling a Mauser, even with all the tools I have. There's cussing, there's yelling, there's crying, there's hand holding, and then the barrel comes out. So this kid did it on the fly and then neatly wraps it in a package underneath a tree after that area was swept. Get out of here.
At a property that's owned by BlackRock.
Yeah. Go figure.
Hello.
We look for a binary answer of who did it, and there could have been several agencies involved or more than one, and then also who they hire to do it for more degrees of separation. So we may never find out, and also that's part of the intentionally created confusion, I believe. So just so that it leads everybody down roads that maybe don't definitively prove something or give you a binary answer. We've been conditioned to think binary, and it's a lot of things aren't aren't like that now.
Come on, everything's a straight line to Mossad. Come on, it's all a straight line. There's no.
I don't want any of my comments to make anybody think that I'm vouching for Erica Kirk. And you're right. The basis of the mistrust is she had the opportunity to completely release the autopsy, to mandate a transparency of that. And all of us are gun guys. There's no fucking way that this guy did so many reps with the kettlebell that he held back a fucking 30-06, to the chest at 100 or 200 yards. It's just completely just cartoon world. I mean, it's an insult. It's an example of how much power and influence they have, that they could put out absolute fucking bullshit like that. And they go, yep, we're going to go with that story. And it was disappointing to see Kash Patel, get toe the line on that. I mean, that to me was a big tell right there.
Yeah, and they shut down. Kent said, hey, we want to look into whether or not there was any foreign involvement, and the FBI shut that down, said, nope, we got our guy. You can't go look.
Yeah. And look, I'm not addressing this from my own personal opinion. I'm addressing this from what I'm seeing in social media, from what the public is saying. There's a lot of people, like, if you read her comments, she just gets ratioed every time she posts something, and it is brutal. I mean, the public despises her, I think, more than Hillary Clinton. And, boil it up to the bigger picture. The bigger picture is they were grooming her to be vice president under J.D. Vance. They were seriously grooming her, and they may still do it. But I think this was a test to see how the public would receive, the trauma victim. And she got eviscerated. because again, influencing operations, you have to slowly stage things for the public to buy into it. And then you gauge the feedback as you go and you tailor your message based on the feedback. You can't recover from this. This is not a message where you could just put something else out. And the speech she did on Turning Point USA didn't help her. It just made it worse. Like, I don't know who's writing the information, the information campaign on this stuff, but they're complete dullards. Because there's no, I would have never put her on TV. Like, just let the blowback go and put her out somewhere else. But now, because of the speech, they're losing people that are showing up to Turning Point USA. JD Vance just canceled his appearance. Other people are canceling their appearance. They pulled her off of the show. They're pulling her out of public events. Hello. So that's the game. The game is played very strategically for a reason. And they clearly are trying to rush this through. And I think it's because they realize they've lost the midterm fight and they're doing whatever they can. And that's assuming we get to the midterms. If you're watching what's going on in the Supreme Court and what they're doing with all these gerrymandering cases, how much time do you think that's going to be before the left goes off the reservation and brings out their blue light, Black Lives Matter and their Antifa crowd? I mean, that's where this is headed. I would be hard pressed to say we're going to have a midterm election at the rate things are going. And what's funny is I was listening to Martin Armstrong today and he's saying the same thing. So I think it's going to be interesting. And I think you're right, Troop. I think Comey he's just the canary. This is the guy. Look over here. Look over here. It's right here. It's just this guy.
So Steve, question I have is, what will be, in your opinion, the thing that will prevent the midterms from happening?
Civil unrest.
And what will be
Trump
the spark?
Assassination, civil unrest,
okay.
Massive attack here by Mossad. I mean, by the CIA. I mean, by MI6. I mean, by Mossad.
Yeah.
Massive attack, emergency war powers. I don't know what the United States version of that is, but
right.
We're not going to cancel the elections, but we need to postpone them indefinitely type of scenario.
Yeah, certainly possible.
And I can tell you what I'm going to do when that happens. As soon as they do that, I'm going to lead the insurgency. I'm not going to play. Because it's not about the elections, right? It's about the fact that they're consolidating power and they're doing it in plain sight. And it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, whether you're liberal or conservative, it doesn't matter. At that point, all bets are off. The government has turned into a tyrannical government more so than they are now, and it's time to take action. And we have a moral obligation to do that. And, the only way they're not going to do anything, the only way they're going to go through with the election is if there's a credible threat that people are going to rise up. That's really the only answer. And unfortunately, the left is, the left, if you want to call them the left, the uniparty is just as bad as Trump. And I mean, Jasmine Crockett was literally on TV saying today, I'm the most powerful person in Washington, D.C. Like, wow, you want to talk about divorce from reality? That's a really good indicator. That should tell you how the establishment views themselves in the eyes of the rest of the world. And look, I'm not advocating violence. I'm just saying there's a trigger point where the public needs to stand up. And that is it. That's the trigger point. Because if you allow them to declare martial law and you allow them to dictate who stays in power, game over. No more. There's no more U.S. There's no more government. That's a dictatorship. And that's a slippery slope. And they could flavor it any way they want to flavor it, but it's still lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, I think they've already signaled to us that they're, by and large, majorly speaking, as a whole, a criminal element. They're covering up the crimes at this point. Criminal, tyrants, dictatorship, kind of a lot of that stuff overlaps, and they're intentionally covering up the criminality. So seems to me that they've made this choice to step across that Rubicon.
Oh, absolutely. And your mom just brought up something I had forgotten about, and that's the alien invasion, baby.
Oh, yeah. Coming up.
No election if there's aliens, baby. Bring it. Let's go. Woo! Let's go.
Alien pussy.
Oh, absolutely. That'd be fantastic. Oh my God.
Well,
Speaking of-
hold on, because
Hold on, 'cause
aliens.
Steve never answered your question, Scott. Hillary or Eric?
I'm never answering that question because I don't want that visual in my head ever.
No,
Well,
but just know
Ever.
I'm trying to stick
know
up for
that the
Scott. You're a lady.
aliens have both sexes. So they have the penis, they have the vagina. So, what are you going to do at that point?
Again,
Pass.
the whole audience could have lived without knowing that they're
Yeah, pretty
away.
much.
just, you could have said it that way and saved us the
Yeah,
graphic.
well, they're
knowledge
like
and
a
the visual.
seagull.
They're
They're
just-
bisexual or binormous. I don't know what that is.
Well, you got to have that in the
Arizona.
drop down combo of the only alien site or the dating site. Are you an asexual hermaphroditic life form? And then take them out of the
Correct.
query.
Are you Jamie Curtis?
This sounds like some James Kirk stuff.
Man, we have gone off the deep end. We didn't go
Yeah,
down the
this-
rabbit hole. We went off the deep end and dived
I'm
Used to be a
sorry.
classy place.
I'm sorry. Guilty.
Hey, Flat Fire,
AZAK vet says most guys have alien stuff at home.
We should have
True
Cliff High on the
statement.
show now. Yeah.
I thought it was I thought it was just a little bit weird to be curious about the girl with 3 boobs in that Arnold Schwarzenegger
Total Recall.
movie. Yeah, Total Recall. You come up with some wild stuff, Blackfire.
All right, on that epically inappropriate note.
I'm sorry, people.
Well, let's redirect this and let's go in a direction that the audience can actually use the information for. Given all that information, what should you be doing right now? I'm going to start with you, Colonel Johnson.
Oh, geez. Well, I thought of this earlier when we were talking about resilient type of things. I feel like the biggest thing we can do is everyone can lead by example. You can't bring all the idiots along, but what you can do is get, just normal human competitive dynamics going where, hey, like I've noticed we got chickens a couple of years back and we've had chickens. Well, now more and more of our friends are like, oh, maybe we should get chickens too. And I feel like that kind of thing, by increasing your ability to sustain yourself in any way you can, that's visible, not like the 3 years of food in your closet, but the idea that you're doing things like chickens that are going to be sustainable indefinitely. And that's going to get other people to be mentally competitive and go, hey, I got to be part of the crowd doing that. The other thing I was thinking was regarding the Erica Kirk thing and everything is I just feel like ever since Charlie Kirk was shot, and if you factor in the shooting attempts on Trump, which I think seem staged, obviously, most of them, the trend is towards more visible political violence. And I think that's going to continue. And I think that's going to lead into what you were saying, Steve, about the election potential or not. And so anyway, we see all the oil costs increasing. We see the stuff I don't think all of us here, anyone listening to us probably can hear that we all think that there's going to be more war. It's going to get worse. There's going to be more restrictions on energy and food, and we just need to plan for that. That's all I got.
Chip?
Yeah, something that Colonel Johnson just said. You hear these people say, oh yeah, we're all the same. There's, the left-right division is false. No, there's differences in ideology, but I see part of their attempt at what's going on right now is to keep the left-right paradigm going, to try to keep us divided, to facilitate the political violence. Just some of the stuff that's going on, this latest leftist teacher, it just doesn't sit right. It seems, I'm not saying it's staged. I'm not saying he wasn't just some crazy nut job, but it also plays into that if that's what they're attempting, is to divide us politically. And and to propagate political violence. And the only other thing I would add to that is just keep spreading the truth and trying to find it and talking to people and waking more people up. There's still a ton of people asleep to most of what's going on and thinking that things are going back to normal. And we just gotta spread, man. Truth to power, man. Speak it.
So I one other thing I wanted to touch on you just jogged my memory, which is true, by the way, is the elite have always used buckets. Like they put people into buckets. You're monogamous, you're heterosexual, you're gay, you're lesbian, you're queer, whatever. But the whole LGBT community, they have literally, and I mean literally, put themselves into boxes where they've created their own conflict, right? And their new acronym is MMIWG2SLGBTQQIA+, which means, let's see, it means, which stands for two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex, with the plus representing the sexual and gender diverse communities. The acronym emphasizes the inclusion of two-spirit people, first, reflecting the specific Canadian context of intersectional, indigenous, and gender diverse recognition. It's a self-licking ice cream cone and the dysfunction they've created for themselves, putting themselves into boxes, creating conflict within their own community. That's exactly what the elite want. That's what they want us to do. Put ourselves into boxes and fight over the boxes. And that's a perfect example of how successful they've been just in that community. They want to keep us all fighting amongst ourselves. What they fear the most is that we organize and we unify. And I've said before, unity is the hill we die on. If we don't unify, we're not going to win this fight. And part of that is building resilient communities. That's what part of this is. That's my advice. Go start building a resilient community. All right. Troop, you're next.
Hydration, sanitation, temperature control. So take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your home, and then work out from there. Always go back to water. Remember, America is a huge, huge place, and the Bolsheviks and Hitler and Pol Pot, and I mean, all these people, they were able to kill millions of people, but there's still more people in society than there are dictators, right? And so one of the things there's two things I keep going back to when I study what happened in this country when shit went south. And three things are always true. The first thing is a lot of the foreshadowing that we're seeing, the divisiveness and the controls and all that kind of starts that process. But when the system breaks, when it literally collapses, there's still people trading food and guns and goods and services in the town squares, and all of these different communities, regardless of how war torn they are. People eventually come out of their houses and they're going to live like communal human beings are designed to live, regardless of what the situation is. So that's number one. We're trying to figure out how to work through this. A lot of it's just going to happen organically. The second thing is the jackboots. There's always a group of people who are willing to abandon their own republic or their own people and wear the uniform, shoot the civilian, work for the man. And once we cross over the Rubicon, and it isn't, we have respect for law enforcement, post-certified peace officers, people that are professional, law enforcement. Nobody likes to get a ticket. I never bitch about it if I get pulled over, but they're acting under the color of law that I accept in order to live in a civil society. Would you go from that to the fucking Hunger Games where you got those dudes that are dressed up like stormtroopers and they'll just kill motherfuckers, for putting up a peace sign in public or whatever? Then it makes proper target identification a lot more simplistic. And once you eliminate the foot soldiers, you eliminate the regime. So they're going to push this narrative indirectly and electronically and through these soft controls as far as they can until they have to tip their hand, until they have to literally put down the enforcement, the goon squads, the Stasi, the gendarme. the stormtroopers, whoever those people are. And once you get to that point in the United States anyway, it's fucking game on. And that they're not going to be able to sustain that, the type of controls that they've sustained in other disarmed countries. And there's a lot that goes to that. And I'm sure that every FBI profiler on the planet right now is, putting me in a little bucket to analyze every post I've ever made now that I've said that. But they know I'm right. Once you cross over that line where you're no longer the guardian of the city, but you're the warden of the city's ideology changes very quickly. The city will take care of the city. The people will take care of the people. So be prepared going into it, absolutely. But you have to respect the organic processes of civil society. And we're going to evolve through this, and we're going to evolve out of it. Now, how long that dark time's going to be, that's really, I think, the question that everybody's asking. Because if there's going to be some suffering and there's going to be some long-term consequences, but I don't see this being a flip of the switch and Palantir is in charge, and all of a sudden we're subservient to Skynet, and until the rapture comes. There's going to be some things that just fuck that plan up. And we can't lose sight of that. Even your most liberal, subjugated, pro-authoritarian person is going to realize when they don't have food or water or free shit that they're going to have to be self-accountable, and they're going to join the fight. And when their own people turn on them, this whole structure is going to resolve. I mean, it's going to go through vacillations, and it's going to be violent and painful, but it will begin the process of working that splinter out of our society.
Yep, I agree. Blake?
I jumped in my wife's car. She said, "Take mine." Cool. 32 miles until it's dead.
We're back to
Put
gas.
gas in your wife's fucking car. Always do. Just don't even trust her to do it, because they won't. They'll just come home. It's like, oh, I got 7 miles. I'm totally good. So just make sure your vehicles are topped. Get that done. Get a right piece for the wife, that she has a small 9 something that she can pull out and go bang 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 and scare someone off. Just do that. Just do that in her rig. That makes her happy. Make it pink. I don't fucking care, but just make it so she's happy. And then the rest of us can have our full gear in our trucks and everything else. But just give her a pink gun. They're just going to make her happy. That she can, quote, scare away the bad guy. So fill it with gas. Give her a gun. And
the gas story, that's pretty bad. But what's worse is, hey, I need to borrow your rig today. I got to pick something up in the truck. And then she takes your truck, and then you got to go do something. You go get her car, and there's 1/8 of a tank. There's no gas in it.
Correct.
Jesus.
Yeah. Standard.
You guys remind me of that guy that I had in my church group. He's like 75, 80. Every week he comes with the same pet issue. And he says, how do I get her off the brakes? She's always on the brakes. Everywhere we go, she's hitting the brakes. How do I get her off the brakes? And literally after the 3rd week, the whole group goes, you don't.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. You're just going to replace the brakes every 3 months.
Yeah, you got one more.
And that's my wife.
All right, Chief, you're up.
Yeah, I would say a big thing is, and we've all talked about this, and you can't really change a lot of people's opinion, but you can kind of change their attitude a little bit. And one of the things I've done is when people are talking about Trump or they're talking about the Democrats, and I said, you know what? Does it really matter? I always get this like weird look. Well, and then people try, and I go, no, seriously. What makes you think until you actually see some change is actually going to happen? Just like until then, so seriously, just shut the F up. And when you say that to people, they kind of look at you and I'm like, no, seriously. I don't care. I'm never going to vote Democrat because I'm not a pedophile. I go, but what I need you to understand is the Republicans just keep screwing over everybody. So until everybody starts waking up, you need to start looking out for you and your family. That's it, period. End of story. Everybody's got commercials. Everybody's got all this stuff going on. So when you talk to people and they want to bring up politics, just tell them, hey, man, you ever thought about turning off the TV and focusing on what you need to? Make sure you got food, water, enough gas in case you had to like get out of the area very soon. Now I live in Florida. You know, like we talked before, you know, you have to be prepared. You know, we obviously got hurricanes, so we've got those type of preparations, but you have to, you know, that's the only other thing I could say. I mean, but the biggest thing is you just got to tell people, like, until you see big change and actually people arrested, no one's been arrested. Until then, what? Nothing. It's the same. It's the same people in charge. They're just changing colors. They're changing jackets. They're walking in the closet, changing jackets, coming back in.
Chief, can I tag on to that?
Yeah, just don't tag on to me because I'm not like that. I'm not, dude. I'm not on Grindr, bro.
I chose the wrong word. Anyway,
that was funny.
Along all the stuff we've talked about, I feel like an idea that I've always thought about, and I don't know if I got this from my dad or where I got it, but I feel like in preparing for the thing that separates us from all the blissfully unaware people is that I think all of us subconsciously have this attitude that, you know, I need to be prepared to survive in modern times and succeed, but I also need to be prepared to survive with nothing, you know, with no modern conveniences of any kind. And I think that's the key nexus of this problem with society, is that so many people have just forgotten the idea that I might have to be able to survive when everything doesn't work, you know, from Amazon, you know, or whatever. And I feel like if people just start to think like that and try to spread that idea, that will drive people to the right decisions, to think about, how do I survive when times aren't, when modern life is not working? That will lead you to the path you need to go.
Eagle Scout.
You're on mute.
I was saying there's a lot to unpack there. It's a good place to end this. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the Black Pill Express tonight. The opinions here expressed are those of the individuals and not of the path forward. And this show is for entertainment purposes only. All right. I'll be back this week. I'll actually be back this weekend because I'll be working, doing some more radio stuff videos. And I'll be back Tuesday with the regular show. Until then, God bless. One team, one fight.
See ya. Hoorah.